very honored to be with Madhusree, as we all are. So I have not prepared this conversation traditionally to talk about her career, etc., because I don't think either of us are at that stage in life when we can say, oh, I made that first film and why did I make that first film, why did I get into cinema, all that's done, we're all here. I would rather like to talk about few ideas, see how things have shaped in your mind, etc. So, would you like to talk about first, very broadly, this form that you did choose at some point, which you call documentary, and which sort of morphed into not being documentary almost, or what this notion of documentary is? If you could talk a little about that, it would be nice. Why you made certain choices, how these choices have changed, what shaped you into these changes?
That's a lifetime question, really. Okay, so this is the apt question, maybe. Bina, as you know that I'm not a trained filmmaker, and okay, she said we will not go there, why we have become filmmaker and how we have become filmmaker, but I'm definitely accidental filmmaker. I have not watched documentary films because those days anyway it was very difficult, except some of Deepa Dhanraj's film, which I had to translate from Hindi to Bangla, paradubbing. You know, those days, film society days, somebody come with a 16 mm projector, show the film on the street corner, and somebody just from the crowd come and start doing paradubbing. So that was one of the first documentaries that one watched, except the BBC films once in a while, or Max Muller-Bhavan showing some German films. Never thought of this genre very seriously. It was not even a genre, proper genre in India in those days. And but as happened that various other public events give you different kind of direction, and you respond to it and you become somebody else, which is wonderful. I mean, it's not a question of regret or rejoice or any such thing. It just happened. So it so happened that I was a new migrant in Bombay and didn't know what to do. Like what everybody does, I used to assist in some kind of off Bollywood fiction films. Not that I decided that I want to make fiction films. Before that I had a theatre background. And Bombay erupted, one riots happened. And we wanted to document some of the facets of the, we are talking about court, we are back to court after the whole lifetime maybe. Document some of the evidences for any future court case. And that became my first film. I live in Verapara. But by the time the film got made, I never thought that it will be a film. So I had to watch Hamara Shahar 20 times to understand how our documentary is structured. Because I come from theatre, it's structured completely differently. But by the time the film got made, I quite fallen in love. I thought that there's lots of possibilities. You can do all these things. All my love for fiction or theatre, then that's happened. Evidences, testimonies, real, they all then came together in my next film. Because also what happened, because I live in Velampara, is a complete documentary, which is a classical documentary. It can be taken as a classical documentary. While making that, I thought it's also a comfort level. I mean, I was quite young, a new first filmmaker, but I watched people that when you watch this, there is a distance. I mean, it's okay. I mean, it's there. I wanted to break that. I wanted to break the magic of testimony, the magic of real. So I then thought, you know, very amateurishly in the beginning that start working, mixing fiction and documentary images.
So Scribbles with Akka, maybe you can talk about on Akka. Maybe you can talk about that, where I mean, you confront one, you've used an actor, which I thought was a very interesting device. Secondly, this confrontation of religion, and I think today that's also an important question that we come back to, that I think at that point when we spoke, you had said that, you cannot avoid religion, you cannot avoid religion. But has that not changed now? Do you not need to avoid religion now? Is there a need for that kind of thing? So if you could talk a little about Akka and maybe how you look at that film today. Yeah.
Bina is talking about Akka because that's her favorite film.
That's
she always shows
I
it.
Always show it, yeah.
So, and I have not seen it for the longest time. I don't even remember it very well. Never mind. It's made in 2000. Interesting because I in a way, it in my head is cupped the 90s decade, which started with Babri Masjid demolition, which in a way made me a documentary filmmaker. Not only me, I think there are a whole lot of us, a whole generation of us became a documentary filmmaker around that time. And then what happened is that actually I think all documentary filmmakers and everybody maybe in this audience will be interested in this, that there is also a dichotomy of popular culture and public culture, and religion stays in the middle of it. So I'm of course majorly atheist character. When I made Behrampara, I was there to say complete separation between religion and state, and that is a private affair and this is public, and you are not to bring your public private faith into public. I mean, I believe in all this, which today I think has become little weak in his argument, in his rhetoric. But I come from that very classical, staunch, atheist, leftist background when I made the films which I made in the middle. But by the time I made Akka, which is like almost a decade after the Babri Masjid and Behrampara, is that is also the feminist, which was the 80s. Our decade, I mean our growing up decade is the 80s, and that is the feminism. And that is also A.K. Ramanujan introducing us to the local literature, and look other feminist artists and all are looking at what are the discourses hidden in our life. So just because Mahadevi Akka is known as a religious icon, so this public icon which we need at that time for gender discourse or for discourse into public behavior, caste today, I mean how much vachanas have talked against the caste, which is so relevant today. Are we to let go of all these legacies that we had only because that religion by itself is now threatening to be popular culture? I mean, that it's coming into the public space, somebody's private faith is coming to the public space and taking over the public space and pushing all other all other entities out. Because of this reality, if we let go of things like Mahadevi Akka, Basavanna, various other tradition, the local tradition, we will only be poorer and less equipped to deal with this onslaught, commercial religious onslaught that's happening. Okay, all these things are okay to think through, but how do you make the film then? As it is supposedly, I mean it could be even a fictitious character, 13th century writer, no script available, you don't even know it is written by one person or a whole village or a community of women, or maybe not women, maybe by men. I mean you don't even know all these things, these are all hypothetical. In that, I am a documentary filmmaker, I want to talk about few facts, few political situation of 2000 based on that. So I had to have fiction characters, I had to bring them, and so the exercise is blending them into the reality. So when I am talking about role of religion in the public space in year 2000, and I am taking going back to build my logic or build my argument to 13th century poet, saint poet, who is called saint poet. I have to bring fiction. I mean, not I have to bring, that's an artistic choice or political choice, I would say. That imagination, and when it is fiction, I want to make it very clear. I want to bring imagination. I want to invite my audience to have some imagination. It's not only, see, this is the evidence, so you should believe in it. Because all evidence are today used by the other side also, same evidence. So it's a question of argument. Evidence by itself doesn't make an argument. So for the argument, you need to, one, you need to have an ideology maybe, and another thing that you have to have an imagination. imagination to see through the evidence or with through the evidence. For me, it is fiction. Fiction gives us that space to invite my audience also to have an imagination to see through the evidence. So I work with the evidence, but I don't believe that evidence, only evidence, really can bring forward the complex discourse that today we need to bring. Talk too much, sorry.
No, please, yeah. No, because I was actually then moving towards memories of fear. Now from Akka to memories of fear. What was that journey? And no, I don't want to talk about the Manchester film, but I thought about memories of fear because of what we are going through now, where fear, whether it is the city, whether, you know, in all spaces now there's such a sense of fear now.
Bina, now that you are reminding me and I'm thinking, what have we done? I'm sorry, I'm feeling a little depressed after seeing Deepadhanra's film yesterday. What have we done? So all these issues, see Me Too, sexual harassment in workplace, that's the subject of memories of fear. Religion and public culture, that's the subject of Akka. Communal violence, that is Behrampara. All these are haunting us even more now. So are we to say that we could not make a difference? I mean, who are we? But all of us together, I mean, not only documentary filmmaker, but all kinds of critical thinking. I mean, everything has come back and much more severe, actually. Anyway, Memories of Fear actually was supposed to be my first film. I was actually writing that script when the riot happened and so made Behrampara. So Behrampara actually, I always say that I have not made. It's the time which has made, because Deepadhanraj also says that there was a time that activists will sit behind you in the editing room and say, we want this character, we want this dialogue, and you will have to accommodate them because you were making a film on behalf of the movement. And but that did not work after a point. I mean, not for Deepa, not for many people, but that's a good beginning to start with. So Memories of Fear in that sense was my first film, and that film also came straightly out of the women's movement of that time, the domestic violence, socializing of young girls. But again, this is the articulation articulation of childhood. Now, articulation of childhood, no child makes, right? It's an adult makes. So when an adult makes a testimony of the childhood, obviously it's not a direct testimony. It's a testimony that you think had happened to you, or the way you look at it. So there is always a space, and the space is where imagination comes. So I was interested from the very beginning that to think that interview format or testimony format is evidential and scripted format, that is to actually deny the whole tradition of script and literature, to deny the space that that's also reality, that's also evidence. So mixing these two, I mean, very clumsily maybe sometimes it works, rarely it works actually. But I wanted, I mean, so much, you know, you fall in love with the documentary protagonist, is very often it happens. You feel so attached, you feel so, I mean, you feel their pulses if it's a good documentary. It always disturbed me. It always made me that, you know, we are not thinking critically, so any other evidence can come and swing our emotion to that way, right? If it is the real face, the real voice, the real experience, if we are talking about quote unquote real, then any other real coming which is happening today, so we'll swing that way. So there has to be some other space between the real and what we take out of that real. There has to be some space for criticality. Now, this goes around in form of cinema, it sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't work.
Well, then that comes now to your next big love, which is the city, and Bombay, and your preoccupation with your relationship with this city, with the city itself, and also cinema in this city. We'll go to the Cinema City project later, but just your relationship with this city. Why have you always felt an outsider, or do you feel like a Bombay wala? And what is this feeling of being a Bombay wala? And now living outside, how much do you miss it? What is this now? What is the kind of attachment and engagement with this city?
You know, I left Bombay, I mean, temporarily I hope, only in 2018, and while leaving, it was, I thought it would be very traumatic, and because everybody knows about my publicly declared love for Bombay. First time actually I felt that when I'm leaving, I have become an insider. This whole act of leaving makes you in. But before that, for some 27 years I lived there, I was always coming. Every morning is coming. A metropolis is like that. You are always trying to come in, and that's the process. You are in various stages of coming in. It's almost like tires. And that's the whole thing, that whole lot of outside people who are coming in and they don't know what is in, at which point it becomes in. When are you in? That you own one, as they call BHK, one bedroom hall kitchen place in Bombay, then you become in. You have a sarkari job, then you become in. You start speaking in Marathi, then you become in. You get a ration card in your name, then you become in. You don't know technically when you are in, and emotionally also when you are in. So you always make this journey, and that makes it very interesting for me. And I think that is good. It's good to be a little outsider. I mean, I would, if I am given another life, say today, and I'll say, I want to be that little outsider. That gives you a perspective, that gives you an access, an angle which is different. And so I now live in and all my life actually I'm a typical Indian in that sense, that I lived in the cities whose local language I don't speak. 27 years I still could not pick up Marathi. I studied in Delhi, I speak awful Hindi. I'm a typical Bengali that way, you know, that you don't pick up any other language. So you are always a little bit about. But I'm not even a Bengali because I'm not from Calcutta. You can become a Bengali only if you are from a particular city, that is Calcutta. And because I'm not born in Calcutta, they are also your little outsider, which I think is great. I mean, I learned it through life and through films maybe, to enjoy that, to make it into a language. That little offness is needed. So anybody I talk to, they cannot be my mirror, right? I mean, I'm not giving a testimony, I'm taking somebody else's testimony. So that being little off, which city gives you that opportunity. You are never, nobody is actually completely, you are not landlocked, right? So you, I mean, in any other, if you are not urban, then you are landlocked. Your family, your 3 generations in the same place, so everybody knows everybody, so that's it. So that out of landlockedness, urbanity interests me, and that little fragility of urban existence, which excites me. I mean, I like that headiness of it. I mean, that headiness of little off. You know, today in Bandra, but if you don't do well, tomorrow you will be Nala Sopara. That little, I mean, I'm not romanticizing it, please. I'm not romanticizing the homelessness or the ruthlessness of urbanity, but I'm saying that this whole native thing has not given us very good situation today. So little bit of moving people, not so settled people, not so confident people, I'm interested in them. And that's why urbanity excites me.
So the use of Ismat Chugtai and
Sadat Hasan Manto.
Sadat Hasan Manto. Would you talk a little bit about that? And
they are actually the 2 narrators. They are completely fictitious characters. This film was made in 2006. They died, I mean, Manto died in 1954, Chugtai died in 1992, few days before Babri Masjid demolition, which is very interesting in Bombay. I bring them back in my film, which I made in 2006, like contemporary characters. So they are documentary characters because I'm quoting directly from their writing, but it's that's creative writing, not testimonies. But I quote from that, but they also comment on the 2006 affairs. So again, those 2 characters are mixed with fiction and documentary things. So the real Manto and real Chugtai were there, but I am also investing them what I think if they were alive in 2006, what they would have said about the state of affair. So it's my fiction then. So their fiction, their documentary, and then my fiction. Maze of a script it is anyway. But so in that is why I'm interested in them. They wrote in, people who have not read Chugtai and Manto, they wrote in Urdu. They were member of Progressive Writers Association. As many of you may know, that time the state was after them, other than political reasons, also for obscenity, because both of them, written few pieces which was that time sexual morality was not, so they were censored. But what people don't know, they're also from popular culture. They wrote typical Bollywood stuff, and Manto in fact did YOLO journalism, who is sleeping with whom kind of stuff. So they were die-hard Bombay people. They like me came from outside, and they are die-hard. They were in love with the city. And Manto, when the partition happened, went to Pakistan. And Chukta was very upset. We are communist people. We are not going to a country which is coming in the name of religion. We are not going to a Hindu or Muslim country. So Manto said, no. Primarily, I am a Urdu writer. And in this secular country of yours, there will be no space for Hindu writers, so I am going. Chuktai got very moralistic about it and was very upset. Chuktai lived in Bombay till 1992, as I told you. Never wrote a single line on Bombay. Wrote about everything. Wrote about Lucknow, wrote about Alibag, wrote about Delhi. Never. Go and try to find Chuktai, never wrote on Bombay. Manto went to Pakistan, was very unhappy. Every morning used to get up and write on Bombay. So who leaves and who stays? Again, what is fiction, what is the documentary? So that excited me. This whole thing about migrants are every morning trying to come to the city and then not really reaching there, and when you leave, actually you arrive, I mean, which happened in my life after a few years. And so that's the excitement. Try to bring that actually living and going is more experiential than physical, and it goes in round and round. We are every day we are trying to reach, and every day we are also departing. Sounds very philosophical. It's not that. It's very concrete.
Yeah. So then comes the huge project that you wanted to launch first in Trivandrum, and we never got down to doing it, which is Bombay Cinema City. So you talk, I think all your concerns finally seem to have culminated in the Bombay Cinema City project. Will you talk about that a bit? About, first of all, what the project is, many people might not know what it was, and also about what drove you to do it, and how satisfied or how fulfilling was it for you to have done that project, because I know it took up so much of your life.
7 years.
Yeah, 7 years. And did you in any sense reach what you did want or thought you had set out to reach out to?
Bina, somebody else will have to decide, but I can tell you why I thought of such a project. One thing is that personally for me, I have not made a film for the longest time, so that makes me a retired filmmaker or a former filmmaker or one such thing.
Just tell them what the project is. What the project was.
Yeah. So once we stopped making films, but by then documentary started exciting me, and I thought it is not only one screen based testimony. Documentary is a way of looking at things. That this evidence, testimony, reality, within that memory, all these things come. It's a practice. It's an intellectual, political practice, and it needs to be practiced many ways. Not break your films into. That can be done. It's difficult, but it can be done. That you do something more. That you invest documentary logic, documentary culture, documentary practice into more, and also collective. We wanted to do some collective things. And as all of you know, that Bombay is obsessed with itself and with its own cinema. It has its own problem. It kills other cinema. It kills within its other voices, documentary voices, and other kind of fiction filmmakers. It makes others of everything, but it itself is another. So it's a major other, and then it makes others. So I was vaguely interested. If you live in that city, you slowly get interested, not because of the stardom or because of the kind of films or the stories or the success. You get interested because the city produces image. Every morning a whole lot of people get up and their livelihood is to somehow or other to be attached with the image. So if the city that makes steel, called steel city, the city which makes textile, that's called cotton city, chemical city. So is the city which makes cinema, and a whole lot of people are involved with cinema, can it be called cinema city? Now there is a problem. Still, you know, this is produced, so and so worked in this, so and so worked in this, and this is produced. So cinema is produced by the time who worked, and their relationship is very difficult to establish. Somebody has stitched a button, somebody has made one hair. They don't even know for whom they have made
Carried
it.
a can. Yeah.
Lot of sweatshop culture. People have no idea for whose eyebrow you are stitching. You are stitching an eyebrow. It's going for Bhishma Pitamaha in some Mahabharata version. So if you knew, you could have sold that idea, but you cannot. So, and then a whole lot of migration is happening towards that. Now this migration, very interestingly, provides the city cheap labor, not only in cinema. Say I mean, we have made lots of films on this later on in this Cinema City project. Is like, say, one person who thinks that he can write. So he comes to become a script writer in Bombay, who has no idea, screenplay, dialogue, this and that. So he becomes a watchman, security guard. I think the film was shown here also. Security guard. But as a security guard, he will never be unionized, because tomorrow morning he will be a script writer, right? So only tonight he is role playing. He is playing a role of the security guard. So he is in a transit camp where he is acting what you think he should be, that is security guard, but actually he is a script writer, and tomorrow morning he will be that. So he will not be unionized. You can make him work for any less than minimum wage thing. So that this aspirational migration, actually cinema doesn't employ that many people. Actually there are other industries which employ most of the people. But everybody has an ambition in cinema. Everybody, they may do anything else, but they think that tomorrow there will be Shah Rukh Khan. And Shah Rukh Khan did this thing because he is supposed to be a nobody, and he came and became a star. So I am not interested in the stardom culture in that sense, but I am interested in all these things which make the urbanity, the heady urbanity. Because tomorrow I will be something else, today I will tolerate anything. You can make me do anything. So I was interested in that. So we tried to investigate into that, because even in this person's testimony, if you go only with a documentary attitude, it's a sad case. But think about it, this person coming from a village, maybe having a little settled livelihood pattern also there, but he doesn't want. He was the headiness of aspiring to be Shah Rukh Khan. Maybe he also know that he can never be Shah Rukh Khan, but this headiness of sleeping with a dream, which a more settled life don't give you. Again, I am not romanticizing urbanization, but when we talk about menace of urbanity or overdevelopment, we must remember that it also deals with people's desire and dream. And documentary also needs to deal with dream and desire. It cannot only do with the sadness and the failure of the system or whatever. So this project was a madness project, as most of my projects. It has architecture, it has of course fiction, performance, visual art, land record, you know, maps, lots of maps, like who lives where. Now this aspiring scriptwriter lives where in the city, and if tomorrow, seriously, I mean 1 in a million, he does become a star writer, then where he will live. So what will be the route, and what is the land record in that route. So various such things. So it was a huge interdisciplinary project between architecture, urban development, cinema, and cinema in a very typical, call it research art and documentary practice. So research art in the sense, as we do the research, it is immediately out as art. It is not that research is done separately and art is made separately. Like I'll give you an example. We made a bioscope. Literally, I mean, what will be the bioscope in 2010? So we actually made a bioscope where you can go and you can play around with that. But inside, what is there was the snippets of timeline. When Shiv Sena started, what was the first talkie film in India, what was the first air-conditioned theatre in Bombay. These are the kind of snippets. You will have to play around with that and create a right chronology which you think is history. You think Shiv Sena first air-conditioned theatre and first talkie is one history or no? It can be three different histories. So you go on playing with, there are thousands of such information, so you go on playing with that information and make a chronology of what you think should be the chronology of history. This is one way of doing public history, is doing history with the public, asking everybody to take part of creating the chronology which you think is right chronology or relating to it. So, it is encouraging people with history making and also questioning the monolithic dominant kind of history. Well, for me these are all documentary practice. So, I am asking my audience to come and do documentary. You may not make a film, but you can make a chronology, you can write a one-page history or whatever. So, these are various games that we played and put it in the public place, people came and played. But this all came from my desire and experience of making documentaries, definitely. But it went some other way. So, I did not make any film since then.
So, you haven't made a film since then, but you have not been doing anything. So, we have to also open it up to the audience. So, one last question about your practice now. You are the artistic director at the the Museum of World Art, Academy of World Arts in Cologne, in Germany. She lives in Germany now. So, why from being the artist, you became the artistic director? Is there, today, this morning, it's really interesting that we showed a film today on Angela Polis, and this was a film that I had seen and I had really liked, and I showed it here. And I felt so pleased to be showing the film, There was a sense of, and I was sort of thinking in my own mind, what's happening here? I've not made this film, but I'm only showing it and I'm only sharing it over here. So, but there is that sense of achievement, or there is that sense of satisfaction. So, if you could talk a little about this shift and what you're doing now. And
well, I'm going to say something very controversial, I'm sorry.
Sure.
I think too much has been made. Too much has been made, and with digitality, too much is being made. So, don't, it's a question of my fellow filmmaker Anirban that says a very nice thing. He made a film called Waste, and in one day in a Q&A he said, as filmmaker today, the most colossal legacy that I have is waste. So, I am learning recycling, which I think that statement stayed with me. I think it's a very great statement, and I think that image making or even narrative making, we have been doing it for such a long time. I mean, the whole humankind, we did it. Today, we need to see that what can be done within that. So, I'm anyway for some time I'm getting interested in archiving and the various kind of access, this whole logic of access, that we are going on producing things are not having to access, the politics of access as a documentary practice. This has been interesting me, and really I have not made a film. When we started, it was more difficult to make film in some sense. Of course, politically it is difficult today, but economically, today it is easier. So, I didn't feel that desire also very strongly. I would have otherwise, because of this. I thought that even more narrative, even more images. Before that, we need to take stock of what we have already produced, and so I'm very interested in found footage filmmaking, archiving, students. Somebody told me that all my films rushes are available online, and somebody told me that you don't feel bad. I said, you know what? I've made the films, it has gone around, whatever, had success, did not have success. After 10 years, if some youngsters take the rushes and the film better than me, it will be exciting. I may not be very glad, but it will be exciting. I would wait for such a moment to happen. So, I think that we need to take stock what we have already produced and what it has to say today in that context, re-evaluating, rearranging and recycling of the images. So, I'm interested. So, to being curative, artistic director means programming, as you know very well. And programming gives you that opportunity, exactly what you said about Angelopoulos' film. That gives you that opportunity, and curating that way is like documentary, you know. I mean, I'll tell you one thing, I think novel, documentary film and curating has some very queer relationship with it, that it's very episodic, and it's you can make a connection completely differently. I mean, curating, you can do that. It's like documentary filmmaking. A whole 7 days festival can look like a dramaturgy, can look like a film script, because that is how you can make a connection. So these things excite me. So I'm trying to follow you.
Oh, well, okay.